My name is Bessie Anderson, and I am 63 years old. I have lived most of my life in Minneapolis, in a small house where the scent of brewed coffee lingered long after breakfast. I thought I had already faced the hardest chapter when my husband passed away 8 years ago, but nothing compared to the quiet devastation that arrived one Tuesday morning when the doctor said the words breast cancer stage 2. His voice felt distant, like it was underwater. He explained treatments and survival rates, but all I could think was that my body had turned against me, and now I had to fight for my life. When I stepped into the waiting room, the weight of it all pressed down. I saw couples holding hands, a daughter balancing a container of soup for her mother, even neighbors sitting side by side to give support. I sat clutching my purse, trying to hide the truth that I was completely alone. In that moment, I realized loneliness had a shape, a sound, and a taste. It sat next to me like an unwanted shadow. I reached for my son, Alfred. At 40, he had built a busy career and a comfortable life with his wife, Rachel, and their boy, Lincoln. My hands trembled as I dialed his number. He answered briskly, "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can this wait?" I tried to steady my breath. "Alfred, it is important, I need to tell you." But before I could say the word cancer, he cut me off. "Just text me. I have calls stacked all day." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. I sat frozen in the car, my chest aching. The tears came without warning. Not because of the diagnosis, but because my own son could not spare 2 minutes to listen. That night, I tried again. Rachel answered the phone. Her voice had that sweet coating she used when she wanted to appear kind. "Oh, Bessie, how are you? Alfred is at the gym." I told her the truth in a trembling voice. "Rachel, I started chemotherapy today. I have breast cancer." Silence stretched. Then she said, "Oh my, that is surprising. When did you find out?" I told her 2 weeks ago that I had been trying to tell Alfred. She sighed. "He is under so much stress with the promotion, and Lincoln has soccer. This weekend is terrible for us, but maybe we can plan something soon." Soon never arrived. The first chemotherapy session left me weak and unsteady. I had prepared myself for nausea and fatigue. I had not prepared for the sight of every chair filled with patients surrounded by family while mine was empty. A nurse named Patricia came over and asked gently if someone was coming to pick me up. I forced a smile and said my ride was late. Hours later, I drove myself home through traffic, my body heavy from the chemicals, my grip on the wheel so tight that my wrist throbbed. As the treatments continued, I woke up to hair on my pillow and stared at the stranger in the mirror. One morning, I picked up the phone again. Alfred answered with impatience. "Mom, I told you I'm in meetings all morning." My voice cracked. "My hair is gone. I am scared." He sighed. "That is normal with chemo, right? It will grow back. I have a presentation." I hung up before the lump in my throat turned into sobs. I bought a wig that never sat right on my head, its synthetic strands reminding me with every touch that I was not myself. The worst part was not the sickness. It was the silence. No food dropped off at my door. No calls from Alfred or Rachel. Only medical bills stuffed into the mailbox. At night, I spoke out loud to the walls just to hear a voice in the house. One Thursday evening, rain swept across the city. The streets glistened with reflections, the sky turning a deep gray. I drove home from treatment alone, my hands trembling on the wheel. Every car that passed held people headed somewhere warm, somewhere together. At a red light, I leaned my forehead against the cool glass and whispered, "In their eyes, I am already gone." By the time I turned into my driveway, the rain beat harder against the windshield, covering the sound of my sobs. I sat in the dark, realizing that I was battling not only cancer, but also the hollow silence of being forgotten by my own family. When the letter arrived, I almost set it aside with the rest of the bills. It came in a cream envelope with my name written in a hand that looked too official to be friendly. I tore it open at the kitchen table, the afternoon light dimming against the blinds, and read the words twice before they made sense. My brother Edward, the man I had not spoken to in over a year, was gone. A heart attack, sudden and cruel. The lawyer's words carried a second shock. Edward had left everything to me. The beach house in Santa Barbara was the centerpiece. I remembered visiting it once as a child, a white house that stood against the ocean like a sentinel. Now it was mine, along with investment accounts and life insurance I had never known existed. I sat back in the chair, the letter shaking in my hands. The brother I had drifted from had in death offered me more support than my own son had in life. I sold my small house in Minneapolis, the one filled with memories of raising Alfred and caring for my husband in his final days. Every corner of it carried ghosts of loneliness from the past 2 years. The moving truck arrived on a Saturday morning, and I packed my life into boxes that smelled of cardboard and dust. When I locked the door for the last time, I did not look back. The beach house was everything the letter had promised. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, opening onto waves that rolled in endless rhythm. The kitchen gleamed with sunlight. The walls held warmth rather than silence. For the first time since my diagnosis, I could breathe without the weight of despair pressing down on my chest. Each morning I drank coffee on the deck and let the Pacific wash over me like a benediction. I told myself this was a new beginning. 6 weeks later, the doorbell rang on a bright Tuesday morning. I was not expecting anyone, and my stomach tightened when I saw the figure through the frosted glass. Rachel stood on my porch, hair perfectly styled, dress flowing in the breeze, smile polished like glass. She opened her arms as if we had been close for decades. "Oh, Bessie, you look wonderful. This house is incredible." I stepped aside, my voice even. "How did you find me?" She laughed lightly. "Alfred has a way of tracking things down. May I come in?" She walked through the door, her eyes already sweeping across the hardwood floors, the chandelier that caught the light, the view from the windows. I offered coffee to buy myself time, and she perched on a stool with the ease of someone who already believed she belonged. Rachel began with apologies. "We should have been there for you during your illness," she said. "Life just got in the way. Alfred's promotion was stressful. Lincoln had soccer. My mother was not well." She spoke as if 2 years of my life were nothing but a scheduling conflict. Then she leaned forward. "Have you thought about estate planning, Bessie? A house like this must be hard to manage for one person. Alfred knows great attorneys who could help with taxes." Her words settled like a stone in my stomach. She was not here to see how I was. She was here to measure what Edward had left. When she left an hour later, the air in the house felt heavy with her perfume and her hunger. The next days brought uneasy whispers. My neighbor Helen mentioned that Rachel had cornered her at the mailbox, asking if I seemed forgetful since chemo. At the grocery store, the manager pulled me aside. "Your daughter-in-law came by. She wanted to know if we noticed you buying strange things or acting confused." Even my oncologist nurse told me Rachel had called several times, asking if chemo might have impaired my judgment. Each account added another crack in my chest. One evening, sorting through boxes I had not yet unpacked, I found an envelope tucked between old bills. Inside was a photocopy of a petition for guardianship. The petitioner was Alfred. The words swam before my eyes. He claimed I was no longer capable of handling my financial affairs, that treatments had left me confused, irrational, unable to make sound decisions. Attached were Rachel's statements, each one more cruel than the last. She said I had forgotten to pay bills, gotten lost driving to familiar places, spoken nonsense about family members. Lies written in neat paragraphs, signed and sworn. At the bottom, a lawyer's note read, "Insufficient evidence of incapacity. Suggest more documentation." The petition had not been filed, but it was clear. They had planned to take control of everything. While I fought for my life, they were preparing to declare me unfit to place my future in their hands. I sat on the floor, the papers trembling between my fingers. The sound of the ocean drifted through the open window, calm and steady, against the storm inside me. My own son had turned me into a target. My daughter-in-law had spread seeds of doubt in every corner of my life. My breath came in short gasps as the truth settled. They had not just abandoned me, they had tried to erase me. I whispered the words into the stillness of the room, my voice low but fierce. My family tried to erase me. The paper slipped from my hands and scattered across the floor, a testament to betrayal more painful than the cancer ever had been. The waves outside kept crashing, steady and relentless, as if to remind me that even against the sharpest wounds the world kept moving. The knock on the door came just before noon. When I opened it, Alfred stood there with Rachel by his side and little Lincoln clutching his father's hand. Lincoln's eyes lit up at the sight of the ocean beyond the deck, and he tugged free to run toward the sound of waves. His laughter carried across the sand, pure and untainted, and for a moment my heart softened. Then my gaze returned to Alfred and Rachel, their polished smiles too carefully arranged. We sat down at the table in the dining room, where the windows framed the Pacific like a painting. I had laid out a simple lunch of roast chicken, fresh bread, and fruit. Lincoln piled his plate high and swung his legs under the chair, oblivious to the tension in the air. Rachel complimented the view, her words coated with admiration, but her eyes scanning the room as if she were taking inventory. Alfred filled his glass of water twice without saying much. Halfway through the meal, Rachel leaned forward, her tone gentle but edged with purpose. "This house must be a lot for one person, Bessie. The upkeep, the taxes, the decisions. You really should consider letting Alfred step in to help." She smiled as if she were offering me a favor. Alfred shifted uncomfortably, not meeting my eyes. I reached beneath the table and pulled out a folder, setting it down between the plates. The guardianship petition lay inside. I opened it slowly, sliding the pages across the polished wood until they rested in front of them. My voice was calm, almost steady. Love does not need paperwork. Control does. Rachel froze, her hand tightening around her fork. Alfred cleared his throat. "It was just precaution, Mom. We wanted to make sure you were safe." "Safe," I repeated, letting the word hang. Safe from what? From making my own choices. From living in the house my brother entrusted to me. Rachel jumped in quickly, saying that chemotherapy affects judgment, that they had only wanted what was best. My stomach clenched at her rehearsed lines. I looked straight at Alfred. Best for who? For me or for you and Rachel? Lincoln asked if he could go back outside to the water. I nodded, my heart aching that he was caught in the middle of this storm. When the door closed behind him, I turned back to his parents. "There is something you did not know. Edward anticipated this kind of betrayal. He put protections in place. If anyone questions my capacity, if anyone attempts to declare me incompetent, the estate is automatically transferred to charity. Every dollar, every brick of this house gone from your reach." Rachel's face drained of color, her composure cracking. Alfred pressed his palms against the table as if to steady himself. He whispered, "You would not let that happen." I leaned forward, my voice low but cutting. "You were not there when I was fighting for my life. You were not there when I sat alone in that cold hospital chair. Do not show up now for what is mine." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. Rachel pushed back her chair, her movements jerky. Alfred stared at the papers as if they might change if he looked long enough. Finally, he rose, muttering something about leaving. I watched them walk to the door, their son trailing behind with confusion in his wide eyes. When the house was quiet again, I picked up the petition and folded it back into the folder. The waves crashed against the shore outside, steady and relentless, carrying the weight of justice in their rhythm. For the first time in years, I felt not weak but solid, as if the tide itself had turned in my favor. The shattering sound of glass cut through the afternoon like a warning bell. I had been in the kitchen when I heard it, and by the time I reached the living room, Rachel was already inside, her face wild with rage. My hands shook as I dialed 911, But my voice was steady when I told the operator someone had broken into my home. The flashing lights came within minutes. Rachel screamed that I was destroying her family as the officers placed her in handcuffs. I stood silent, the broken glass crunching under their boots, knowing she had crossed a line she could not erase. News of her arrest spread fast. Alfred's company did not look kindly on scandal, and within weeks he was let go. Soon after, the marriage cracked wide open, each blaming the other, until there was nothing left. I should have felt triumphant, but what I felt instead was an ache. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned Alfred had been drowning in debt for years, a man desperate to keep up appearances while his life collapsed behind closed doors. It explained his silence, his choices, but it did not excuse the betrayal. The weeks that followed brought something I had not felt in years. Calm. My neighbor Helen stopped by on my birthday with a small box wrapped in simple paper. Inside was a delicate glass wind chime that caught the afternoon light. She said she had made it in her art class and wanted me to have it because it sounded like peace. I hung it by the porch, and when the breeze moved through, it filled the air with soft music that reminded me I was no longer alone. That same month, I started the Second Horizon Fund, taking $50,000 from Edward's inheritance and giving it to the hospital that had seen me through the darkest nights. The program would provide rides, meals, and company for patients who had no family to stand with them. As I signed the check, I felt something lift inside me. The weight of bitterness had finally begun to fade. One evening, I carried a chair out to the deck and watched the sun fall into the ocean. The sky turned shades of gold and rose, and the wind chimes sang softly behind me. In that moment, I understood something I had not before. Family is not defined by bloodlines or paperwork. Family is who stands beside you when life breaks you and who helps you rise again. Now I want to turn to you listening to my story. If you had been in my place, what would you have done? I invite you to share your thoughts and the city you are watching from. Your voices remind me that none of us are truly alone when we choose to stand together.